This morning, I'm going to be speaking about forgiveness. How to forgive, certainly, but more importantly, why we should forgive and what we can expect if we do. I have friends who were raised Catholic, and while a lot of Catholicism strikes me as odd, I've always been intrigued at the thought of regular confession. I thought it was an interesting concept. The idea that no matter what you had done, you'll be forgiven if you just go to confession. Sounds like a good way to get things off your chest and not worry about them anymore. This may have inspired the stand-up comic Emo Phillips to relate the following observation. When I was a kid, I used to pray every night for a new bicycle. Then I realized that the Lord doesn't work that way. So I stole one and asked him to forgive me. Now, perhaps you can relate to this statement. I'm a person who likes the concept of forgiveness until I'm a hurting soul who doesn't. Which is another way of saying that we like forgiveness in theory, but we don't necessarily like it in practice. Why? Because of the nature of forgiveness. You're going to have to give up something in order to get something. What you give up is the right to demand that those who hurt you pay you back or be made to suffer for what they've done. But what you get is the freedom to move on. So what keeps me from giving up the hurt and moving on? There could be any number of reasons. Maybe I'm hanging on to a grudge which gives me a sense of control in a situation that seems so unfair. Perhaps forgiveness seems that it trivializes, minimizes, or worse yet, makes what happened no big deal. Perhaps I say I can't possibly forgive when I still feel so hostile toward the one who hurt me. Or I'm not ready to forgive because I still feel the hurt. Or they haven't apologized or even acknowledged that what they did was wrong. Or I'm afraid that forgiveness will give them false hope that I want to reestablish the relationship when I don't. Being back in a relationship with this person isn't possible or safe. And it's easier to ignore this person altogether than to try to figure out boundaries so that they don't keep hurting me. What they did can't be changed. Therefore, forgiveness won't help anything. Or the person who hurt me is no longer here. I can't forgive someone I can't talk to. Or it's too late. I don't think any good can come from forgiveness now. If you think about it, forgiveness is very often a problem of time. First we say it's too soon, and then the years go by and we say it's too late. We all have stories of when we've been injured, hurt, wronged, and brokenhearted by the choices of others. And it's so easy to be so very offended. But I can't sit around waiting for someone to do something to make me feel better. If I'm waiting for another person to make things right, I may remain trapped in my pain, waiting for something that may or may not ever happen. The person who hurt me may be the proximate cause of my pain, but that person cannot heal my pain or restore my happiness. I am the only person who can do that. So like everything else in life, it's up to me. I am responsible for my own peace of mind, my own happiness. So the only rational thing to do, the only compassionate thing to do, the only way to treat myself with loving care is to forgive. Question is, how? Well, there are two components to forgiveness: decision and process. Decision and process. The first step is making the decision to forgive. It's as simple as that. You decide to forgive. Simple, but not always easy. In fact, it may be very difficult. But the decision must come before the process. You must decide that you've had enough and that you're going to give yourself the gift of being free from all of that anger, hurt, and resentment that you've been hauling around. And then, having made the decision, you can walk through the steps of the process. The decision happens now. The process may take some time and perhaps a lot of effort, but the alternative is not good. Lisa Turkhurst says, if healing hasn't been worked out and forgiveness hasn't been walked out, chaos will continue to play out. So what are the steps to true forgiveness? Well, in theory, forgiveness would occur instantly, the moment we decide to do it. And that can happen. But most of the time, forgiveness is a process, and making sense of it is unique to your situation and where you happen to be on your spiritual path. But I'm guessing that for most of us, some or all of the following steps will be necessary if we're to truly forgive. Step one, acknowledge. Acknowledge the hurt. Don't try to put a lid on it. Express it. Who hurt you? Why did they do it? What's the context of the situation? How long ago did this happen? Acknowledge. Step two, consider. Consider how the hurt has affected you. Now, the word consider is key here because it involves thinking before deciding. Before you decide whether you'll forgive this person, consider the negative feelings you've acquired since the incident. How has the pain changed you? How hurtful was the person's mistake to your life or to someone else's? Acknowledge and consider. And then step three, accept. Accept that you cannot change the past. No matter how much you wish you could strike back, admit that your anger toward the person won't settle the score. It's during this step that you must really thoughtfully consider whether you really want to forgive. And then, if your answer is yes, step four, determine. Determine that you will forgive. And this is where the forgiveness process begins. And this decision should not be made lightly. It will determine the future of your relationship with this person. Step five, repair. Repair the relationship with the person who wronged you. Before any act of reconciliation, rebuild as best you can the connection that you used to have with this person. Note that you're attempting to repair the relationship, not necessarily restoring it. It may take some more time for that relationship to return to normal, and it may never get there. But acts of repairing can include kind words, simple gestures, gifts, a loving attitude. Step six, learn. Learn what forgiveness means to you. Up until now, you may have thought that forgiveness is more for their benefit, not yours. But forgiveness is a way for you to find closure, closure that soothes and heals. And then if you've worked through these steps, step seven, forgive. Forgive the person who wronged you. And in some cases, this will just be an internal process between you and yourself. Or you may be compelled to verbally forgive the person, even if you don't expect a kind response. But if you followed through on the previous steps, their reaction won't really matter. What will matter is that you have found a way to let go and move on. Now, you may be thinking, 6 steps before you actually get around to forgiving? That seems like a lot of work. That life is good because that life is God. And that life is my life right now. And it's Cindy Lohman's life right now and always. Cindy is a perfect idea in the mind of God. And I know that the creative intelligence that conceived her in perfection is more than capable of sustaining her in perfection. So right here and right now, we cast aside appearances. We let go of fear, anxiety, negative emotions of any kind, as we know that spirit energy is flowing through Cindy's body right now, refreshing, repairing, renewing, rejuvenating every cell, every system, every structure in her body. And so we know for Cindy, the highest and best, expressing in divine right time and divine right order. And we know that the professionals who are attending her right now are also expressions of the divine, doing their work with love, with skill. And so we give thanks that we can rely on Spirit to guarantee the highest and best outcome in any situation. And having spoken the truth about Cindy, we know that we can release it with gratitude to Spirit. We let it go. We let it be so. And we affirm that this is the truth by saying together, and so it is. Well, I'm going to attempt to pick up where we left off, but just as a little review, we had looked at 6 steps or 6 decisions that we must make before we get around to actually doing the forgiveness process. And so that is step 7. And so right now, let's take a look at this thing that you need to forgive. And let's give it a name. Let's call it evil. Now, we don't use that word much around here because we believe that there's only one power, and it's a power for good. There is no power for evil. But just for a moment, let's call the wrong that you experienced evil. Your anger, your thoughts of retaliation, your desire to get even, don't do anything to get rid of the evil. Your desire for vengeance, your wish to settle the score, only feed the evil. They allow it to perpetuate and grow. And if we're not very careful, we can actually absorb the worst aspect of our enemy and perhaps even start to become them. So what if your attitude was, what you did is so not okay that I refuse to be connected to it anymore? Forgiveness is about freedom. And you can't be free when you're obsessed or possessed by your offender. It's been said that when we refuse to forgive, we are bound by chains to our offender. And that's a useful mental image, but let me propose another one. Have you ever seen one of those historical drama movies set 100, 200 years ago, in which an old-fashioned blood transfusion was performed? Back in those days, there was no such thing as bags of donated blood waiting to be infused into the patient. Instead, the blood donor was hooked up to an IV on his end, and the other end of the IV was hooked into the patient. In other words, the blood went directly from the donor to the patient in real time. So let's consider that for a moment. What if you recognize that you're connected to the person who wronged you with a metaphorical IV? And what if you realize that in refusing to forgive and move on, you're getting an infusion of that person's bad blood into your system. Freedom is refusing to be connected to the anger, the hurt, the desire for revenge. Free people are not controlled by the past. Free people laugh often. Free people see beauty where others do not. Free people are not easily offended. Free people are not chained to resentment. A story, a true story. For much of her life, Auschwitz survivor Eva Moses Kor was filled with hatred for the Nazis who killed her family and subjected her twin sister and her to grueling medical experiments. And in 1955, Eva found that forgiving the people who harmed her was a pathway to joy. In her book, The Power of Forgiveness, she shared her life story to help others cast aside anger and to demonstrate how to remember the Holocaust without passing hate on to future generations. Now, when Eva's family arrived in Auschwitz in 1944, her mother, her father, and her two older sisters were sent to the gas chambers. But because Dr. Joseph Mengele sought out twins for dangerous medical experiments, Eva and her sister Miriam escaped death. But 6 days a week for 10 months, Eva and her sister were stripped naked and monitored by scientists as they were given transfusions of who knows what. Determined to survive, the twin sisters battled illness, starvation, and the hardships of life in Auschwitz. Upon liberation in 1945, the twins were 11 years old. They remained together, first in Romania and then in Israel, until 1960, when Eva moved to Terre Haute, Indiana, with Michael Kor, her new husband and fellow survivor. And Eva's hatred and rage escalated when her sister began suffering from medical conditions that doctors had difficulty diagnosing and treating. And when she finally died of cancer in 1993, Eva believed that Miriam's life could likely have been saved if she had known more about the nature of Dr. Mengele's experiments. So in 1993, Eva met with former Auschwitz physician Dr. Hans Munk in hopes of learning details about the Auschwitz experiments on twins. And though Munk knew very little about Mengele's work, he agreed to help. And Eva discovered, much to her surprise, that she actually liked this former Nazi. At her request, Dr. Munk signed a declaration detailing the purpose of Auschwitz and his role in the Nazi killing apparatus. And then Eva delivered a personal declaration of forgiveness to everyone who participated in the Holocaust. And as she spoke, Eva said that she felt all the pain that she had carried with her for 50 years lifted from her shoulders. Eva found forgiveness empowering, and she became a vocal forgiveness advocate. She filled her book with advice for readers seeking to forgive, asking them to write, but never send, personal letters to those who had harmed them. Forgiveness helps people break free of their rage, Eva said, while those who hold on to anger allow their victimizers to control their emotions and their lives. We don't forgive for others, she explained. We forgive for ourselves. Failing to forgive can also create a cycle of destruction in which victims pass on their repressed rage and powerlessness to their own children and grandchildren, who, in turn, eventually seek revenge. The ideas in her book, The Power of Forgiveness, are an asset for anyone looking to regain their power and move on from anger. For those in bondage to the toxic atmosphere of political animosity or victimhood culture, Eva's path may show the way to a more productive relationship and a more fulfilled life. Other Holocaust survivors expressed anger and confusion over Eva's ability to see the humanity in former Nazis. Strangers struggled to understand how a survivor could possibly smile and dance at Auschwitz. But finding joy did not cause her to forget the Holocaust. In 1995, she created the Candles Holocaust Museum and Education Center. And through writing, speaking engagements, running her museum, and leading tours at Auschwitz, Eva kept history alive without letting history destroy her. Now, it is highly unlikely that you and I will ever experience anything remotely as horrific as the Holocaust. So, if you're struggling with forgiveness, just remind yourself that if Eva could do it, so can you. Your heart is much too beautiful a place for unhealed pain. You are much too deserving of freedom to remain trapped by your pain. Give yourself the gift of forgiveness. After all, if we divide the word forgiving, we have two words: for, in favor of, and giving, to give. When you forgive yourself, you're giving yourself a priceless gift. When you forgive another, to whom are you giving? The other? Sometimes. Yourself? Always. To forgive another is to be in favor of giving to yourself. I'd like to share with you a traditional forgiveness prayer. You may have heard this sort of thing if you were raised in a traditional religion. Dear God, please help me to forgive this person for hurting me. Help me to see the greatness in him and to love him the way that you do. Help me to relinquish the anger that I'm experiencing so that I can walk in the fruit of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Help me to heal from this incident and to release any bitterness that I may be harboring. Please give me guidance in this situation so that I can approach it in the way that is most pleasing to you. Help me, God, to do your will. Now, that prayer is not totally off base. For many people, that prayer might be very helpful. Certainly, it's better than wallowing in the muck of bitterness. But notice how it sort of puts the responsibility for change on God. Oh God, I seek your grace and healing. Please heal me from within. Release me. Bring me peace of mind. I surrender myself wholly to you and beg for your grace and healing. Notice that it's a plea to a God that's out there instead of a conversation with a God that's in here. And also, it's our minds that need to be changed, so it follows that we are the ones who are most ably suited to change our minds, which is to say, God isn't going to change our minds for us. Only we can do that. Forgiveness begins with convincing your head of the benefits of letting go of the ill feelings, and then prayer releases the pain from the heart and completes the process. So let's look at a new thought version of a forgiveness prayer. Knowing that God is all there is, I realize that I am some part of that allness, and so is every other person in this world. Therefore, I know that I am literally one with everyone, including the person who hurt me, either out of ignorance or malice. Looking from the highest vantage point of divine love, I see the greatness in him and love him as I am loved. I now relinquish the anger that I'm experiencing so that I can walk in the path of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. My decision to forgive heals me by dissolving the bitterness, resentment, pain, and anger that I have harbored. I am divinely guided in this situation, so I cannot fail to reap the benefits of my forgiveness. My choice of love over hate enriches my life and my world. I give thanks that Spirit now supplies me with the power to experience perfect peace. And so it is, now and always. Now that prayer gets to a very important point. If there's only one life, that means that we are one with every person on this planet. And to be living in perpetual conflict with anyone means that we're living in perpetual conflict with ourselves. Where there is no forgiveness, there can be no peace. Forgiveness is the only way to break the cycle of resentment, frustration, and violence, whether physical or mental. Remember that Marianne Williamson quote, "The practice of forgiveness is our most important contribution to the healing of the world." Peace on earth begins with forgiveness, and in order to forgive, we must find the compassion to forgive. Compassion for the offender, as well as compassion for ourselves. In Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke, the word forgive literally means to untie. And that's what forgiveness does. It frees us from the ugliness that has bound us. And in the process of forgiving another, we're liberating ourselves. As is often said, to forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you. And what if you've done your forgiveness work only to find that the offender and the offense still pop up in your mind? Send him or her a blessing. The law of cause and effect, karma, what goes around comes around. That law is in play. And the evil we wish for another has a rebound effect. But the blessing that we wish for another has an even bigger and better rebound effect, because life is always biased in favor of the good. And when you can send someone a blessing, regardless of how you've been wronged, you'll know that you're well on your way to wholeness. So let's wrap this up with a spiritual mind treatment. I invite you right now to think of any unresolved issue in your life, and just let the following words shine a new light on your offender and you. I know that God is the ultimate source of my good, and I see God's presence and action in my life daily through the law of circulation. I choose to use the law consciously. I choose to trust in the law. I celebrate the ever-increasing flow of spiritual energy through all my affairs. I'm ready to open my life even wider, to accept more of the good things in life. In the past, I may have unfairly judged myself to be undeserving, unlovable, or unworthy of abundance. I may have imagined myself to be powerless or somehow disconnected from the universal flow of good. I now realize that these beliefs simply are not true. I am worthy of God's rich abundance. I forgive myself for all past mistakes and false judgments. I deserve to feel good about myself and my life. I am ready to release all judgments that I have placed upon others. I no longer need to hold on to the feelings from the past. I am ready to be free. I am willing to let go of anything that stands in the way of my greater good. I forgive all people, circumstances, and conditions that may have brought me pain in the past. I am committed to changing my thinking and moving on with my life. And as I do this, I trust in the law of circulation to bring me my higher good. This law cannot let me down. I am opening up. I am freeing myself from the past. I am forgiving and letting go. And I thank God for the rich abundance that floods every corner, aspect, and area of my life. and so it is. Namaste.